Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're reviewing for you Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe for the Nintendo Switch. This review was originally written by the spectacular PJ O'Reilly and has been adapted for video by me. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. If you've been on NintendoLife.com and you've had a bit of a gander at our best Kirby games of all time list lately, or read the original 9 out of 10 review from back in the day, you'll know that we hold Kirby's Return to Dreamland in very high regard around these parts. It's a return to classic Kirby action after a few less successful deviations from the norm. Sorry, Canvas Curse and Squeak Scott, but this is what we wanted. This 2011 entry in the franchise was yet another super strong addition to the Nintendo Wii's formidable roster of top-notch platformers. Now, some 12 years down the line, 12 years, HAL Laboratory has returned to Dreamland to bring us this deluxe edition of the Pink Puffball's grand return and, well, it's still a banger. But now it's a banger that looks much nicer, plays even better, and features more content than ever before. Yes, when they say deluxe, this time they ruddy well mean it. Not only have the original game's visuals had a delightful makeover, ditching all the traces of jaggy edges for a super slick and sharp new look, but there's also been all manner of nips, tucks, and improvements to gameplay alongside the addition of 2 excellent new modes to sink your teeth into. Does Kirby even have teeth? But let's back up a little here for those amongst us who haven't yet played the original game. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe sees Kirby and pals come to the rescue of an intergalactic traveler known as Magolor when his ship, the Lore Starcutter, crashes through a wormhole and smashes down onto planet Popstar. You know, standard stuff. It's now up to you and as many as 3 other players in local co-op to bound around the various 2.5D levels in order to retrieve 5 missing pieces of Magolor's craft. Along the way, you'll use Kirby's trademark copy abilities to take on a host of colourful foes and do battle with a bunch of classic Kirby bosses. There are 8 worlds in total to float and fight your way through here, and they've all stood the test of time well, with lots in the way of fun and creativity as you blast through the roughly 7-hour-long campaign. As ever, there's a wonderful balance struck by HAL, making for an adventure that's plenty entertaining for us older Kirby fans, whilst also remaining fully accessible for much younger players to get to grips with. Also, whilst it may only take you around 7 hours, as we said, to blast through this one if you're focusing on the main objective, the 120 energy spheres hidden around levels will easily take that number up into double digits. They're not especially hard to find for the most part, but later areas do possess a few spheres that will put you to the test, even if it's only a little bit. Whilst the various levels in the game do run the usual gamut of Kirby environments without too many surprises, and although we've been zipped along conveyor belts made to avoid stomping pistons and chased by an encroaching wall of black hole energy a million times before, I mean, we just call that a Monday. There's just so much character and colour to Kirby, his friends, and his zany copy ability set. Elements of the game which could be seen as a little dated remain a joy, especially when you team up with a few other players in local co-op where things get properly raucous. Kirby's Return to Dreamland also introduces a bunch of super abilities, 5 ultra versions of regular copy abilities that you'll get your hands on throughout the game, enabling you to activate screen-shaking variations of your normal attacks in order to wipe out groups of enemies and destroy environments in order to uncover secrets or just progress. Honestly, in returning to this classic style of Kirby action after having so recently been treated to the newfangled delights of Kirby in the Forgotten Land, we've been impressed with just how good the old school action holds up here. Sometimes there's just no beating a tried and tested formula. Of course, this deluxe edition isn't just serving up the 2011 version in its vanilla state with a few graphical bells and whistles. Oh, crumbs no. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe brings a bunch of new modes to the table, which give the core game a real boost. Merry Magoland, which is available as soon as you clear the first stage, is a Magic Kingdom-esque amusement park mode which collects together 11 Kirby minigames for you and up to 3 other players to get stuck into. Of the games on offer, 8 of them have been selected from previous Kirby titles, with the likes of Ninja Dojo from the original Return to Dreamland, Kirby on the Draw from Superstar Ultra, and Egg Catcher from Kirby's Adventure. The 3 new additions for this deluxe version are Booming Blasters, which is a chaotic top-down arena shooter, Samurai Kirby 100, a variation on vanilla Samurai Kirby which pits you against online leaderboard times, minigames, and Magolor's Tome Trackers, which charges you with grabbing assigned books off shelves before your opponents. Taken separately, these minigames are pretty throwaway stuff, there's no doubt about that, but bundled together in this wonderfully upbeat and colourful theme park setting, they make for a mode that you can easily spend a lot of time in, besting your own high scores, taking on harder difficulties, and having an absolute blast with friends, all the while collecting stamps that unlock some 86 different character masks that Kirby and company can wear during the main campaign, and indeed, the minigames. We've yet to try our hand at the online side of Merry Magoland, an online mode which is limited to battling it out against high scores and times, but we reckon there'll be plenty of challenge to return for once the people start posting up ridiculous records for each of the games. Oh, and there's a tour mode to get stuck into as well, allowing you to choose any 4 minigames at a time and then dive into them with your pals, which is a perfect way to tick off the 100 missions that the game has put together for you to complete across all the activities on offer. The other big new addition in Kirby's Return to Dreamland is Magolor Epilogue. This is an entirely new mini-campaign which can again be played with up to 4 players that you'll unlock once you've beaten the main story for the very first time. Here you take control of Magolor as he sets out across 4 missions, each comprised of 4 stages and a unique boss battle. We won't go into too many details here for fear of spoilers for new players, but we were properly impressed by this new mode. It's a good 90-minute chunk of game time that gives you a bunch of upgradable new powers to play around with, platinum medals to chase in every stage, and, dare we say it, the very best boss battles in the entire game. Yes, they really are that good. A handful of slightly more challenging affairs that put Magolor and his expansive suite of powers to a decent test. Away from all these headline new features, you've also got 2 brand new copy abilities to play around with here. Mecha and Sand, both of which fit into the fun perfectly well. In actual fact, we reckon Mecha is one of our favourite Kirby abilities ever. It equips you with powerful lasers, overhead blasters, multi-directional thrusters to zoom around levels with. Once you've beaten the main story, the returning extra mode, which has also seen a few surprise tweaks, unlocks alongside the arena, giving you a challenging new main campaign variant and a boss rush mode to contend with. All of this makes for a Kirby adventure that's absolutely packed to the gills with content and replayability. Indeed, we've beaten the main story, the new epilogue, and had a fair old crack at the minigames so far, and our save file is showing us at just 34% completion. That's a lot of Kirby. In terms of performance, the whole thing zips along at a super smooth frame rate, and the new graphical overhaul here really brings the game up to date, with lots of new environmental details and crisp visuals that look particularly great on the Switch's OLED screen. It's not all just fancied up graphics either. Character models have been updated across the board to align with more recent appearances in the franchise, there's an easier difficulty setting that sees Helper Magolor get involved, and additional collectibles such as tickets for Merry Magoland have also been dotted around the levels. There have also been a few little tweaks to the core gameplay mechanics thrown in here as well. Kirby can now take souvenir items into campaign stages, which is a mechanic borrowed from the Forgotten Land, so you've always got a backup Maxim Tomato or copy ability should you ever need it. Characters can now dodge and air dodge by holding a direction as they block, and Kirby and pals also now have access to a range of in-game emotes. It's what the previous games were missing. In the end, what you've got here is one of our all-time favourite Kirby adventures, looking and playing better than ever, and jam-packed full of excellent new content and modes for fans to get to grips with. The core game has stood the test of time well. I mean, it really is hard to believe that this one is 12 years old already, and the added content, especially with regards to the new epilogue, is honestly worth the price of admission, even if you've already blasted your way through Return to Dreamland countless times before. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe is a fantastic remake of one of our favourite Kirby adventures. With slick new visuals, some meaningful gameplay tweaks, and 2 excellent new modes to dig into, this is one big, loud, and colourful celebration of all things Kirby that should delight new and returning players alike. Magolor's Epilogue is a surprisingly chunky addition to the core action that gives the campaign a nice little boost, whilst Merry Magoland ensures that you and your pals are kept busy with plenty of minigames, missions, and online challenges to best once you're done with the main story mode. It's yet another win for everyone's favourite pink puffball. You've reached the end of the review. That means it's time for Alex's personal thoughts, and, can I shock you? I never played Return to Dreamland when it first came out, and not just because it was called something different in Europe. I just never had it. I kind of, for a long time, I kind of skipped out on the Wii. I got a 360 instead because I thought it was cool. And whilst Return to Dreamland Deluxe is very much a sort of by-the-numbers Kirby adventure, and, you know, coming off the coattails of the Forgotten Land, going back to 2D's, a bit of a sort of downgrade in terms of the number of dimensions you can move in, I still had a fantastic time with this game. I really, really enjoyed it. After Star Allies kind of forced the idea of 4 players, even if 3 of them are CPUs, down your throat, it's really refreshing to be able to just play this just by yourself, you know? And, you know, multiplayer is a big deal. Some people are going to have the most fun they've ever had playing this multiplayer, and that's great. But for me, I don't know, sometimes it's just nice to do something by yourself, you know? Merry Magaland is a really clever and interesting way to present the minigames. I mean, it's not like it hasn't been done before, but it's just nice to be able to sort of move around this world and interact with the minigames like that. For some reason, they're also, like, you can unlock them in the main game, which I'm presuming is a hangover from the original. I don't know why that's still a thing, because you can just go to Merry Magaland and play them anyway, and I don't know, I'm just confused as to why you also unlock them in the main game. Maybe just for the sake of completeness? I don't know, but it's a thing. And yeah, as PJ said, any one of the mini-games isn't like anything massive to write home about, but the fact that you've got them all in this sort of lovely little package is really nice, and it makes it feel substantial. It sort of feels like it almost could have been its own Kirby game in some ways. I mean, I don't think it would necessarily have stood up by itself, but as a secondary part of another bigger game, a single-player focused game, it's fantastic, like flawless execution. One minor complaint I do have is that if you're using the analog stick, it's not analog, it's just kind of replicating the D-pad, so you can only move in the 8 cardinal directions, and, you know, sort of how much you move the stick doesn't affect how fast Kirby moves unless you take the sprinting into account, which happens when you flick it, because it's based on Smash Bros, sort of. But having said that, I had an absolute blast with this game. It's absolutely certainly a good